just for passing the time. They are a way to discover new passions, even with low stress, and connect to something deeper level. We need that. It's a chance to break out of the routine and find joy in just doing something different, something that's all your own. You might even surprise yourself. A new hobby could lead to new friendships or opportunities or even a new career path. Most importantly, it could be the key to a renewed sense of purpose and happiness. So why not give it a try? Just embrace the unknown. Take that first step and see where a new hobby could take you. Might just be the turning point.
Some people just know they can save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the propane tank on your grill first before hosting a tailgate.
Let's fire up. Here, let me try.
Seriously? You didn't check the propane?
Who wants it?
Yeah, check first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that can save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northwood, Illinois.
On your period, some gushes happen without warning. But now, you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears. Thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable, but always fear no gush.
Okay, Furnace. Time to wake up, buddy. I gave you the whole summer off, so now I need you to keep me warm. Come on, that's fair, isn't it? Can't you just give me a little heat, maybe?
Can I be of service? When the weather turns, when the first autumn chill reminds you how important your furnace can be, one man will be by your side, ready for truth, justice, and a furnace that's ready for fire.
The age-old booming bowman. My, but you are impossibly handsome.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I have my mother's elbows. But did you know that the furnace experts at H.L. Bowman will inspect, clean, and tune up your furnace before the winter weather hits to make sure your furnace is up to the task?
Well, I'd look for a drink if you have a few minutes.
I'm afraid drinking and archery don't mix. Visit hlbowman.com.
A non-attorney spokesperson. Paid for by Action Matters. Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at xplan.us. Texting enrolls you for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out.
Attention anyone who used Depo-Provera or other prescription birth control shots. If you or a loved one used Depo-Provera and were later diagnosed with brain tumors or intracranial meningioma, you may be entitled to significant cash compensation. Text assist to 200-300 right now to see if you qualify. A new study has uncovered evidence linking Depo-Provera use to the development of brain tumors, and emerging lawsuits allege that manufacturers of Depo-Provera knew the risks for decades but failed to warn people of the potential harm. If you or a loved one used Depo-Provera or other prescription birth control shots and were later diagnosed with brain tumors or intracranial meningioma, you may be entitled to significant cash compensation. Text assist to 200-300. Don't wait. Time to file a claim is limited. Text the word assist to 200-300. If you or a loved one developed brain tumors after using Depo-Provera, you may be entitled to...
No more, no
washing machines, AC, photocopiers, and LASIK surgery. A+ inventions. Tinder, automatic transmission. Roombas, CGI. No. Sure. I'm not that impressed by freezers. They made milk when I was school. I was urinating in those glass bottles with cracked milk. The signals were days long. Instant. Social media, websites frustrate us. These cookies I'm only asked to accept. TV's probably my favorite 20th century development. I always have the newest model. And these days, it's all so good. Prestige, reality, sitcoms, cartoons. I mean, have you seen Succession? P-Valley? And obviously, all good. Good music's good music. Genre's just a matter of character. Ricky's eyes were endless wide. For want of anything else to say, she sputtered, but you say all of this like it's so normal. It isn't. But it is for life. She gestured vaguely as she tried to formulate a response. Shut her mouth, then tried again. There's so much I don't get. You really look like a 28-year-old dude, like someone I could have known in college. And you're always beautifully dressed, so curvy. How does a 124-year-old man even know about Virgil Abloh Jordans? Grinning, he glanced down at his feet and back at her. Ricky noticed everything. I'd think fashion would be one of those things too exhausting to keep up with. Look at Miss Della. Pause, remembering that she was out of it. Maybe out of it. He shook his head a bit, reset. She's over 90 with big hair. Style is amazing. I have to ask, how do you afford to shop, travel? Do millennials even need money? Good question. Clumsily, he tried to change the subject. I'm sorry, I didn't even get a chance to ask you. I gave you some coffee. He tried to get up from the table. Stop. Don't you dare move. And then her voice softened. Please, stay. Talk to me. I want to believe you. I need the whole story. How do you sustain yourself? Ezra fidgeted menacingly. Raw melancholy darkened his expression. He'd spent decades not talking about himself to anyone. A doctor, lawyer, really. It was a hard habit to break. And how would he start? How does a creaky relic explain his life in times that were unfortunate enough to be born into a relatively sane world? How could he describe the way living through so many eras, generational resets, and rewrites of social norms set off a low panic in him when they spoke to people? Worried he'd forget what the appropriate customs of the day were. How could he relay his fascination with walking Target or CVS aisles and just gawking at all the options, especially for shit that didn't exist when he was a kid, like mosquito spray, lint rollers, and ibuprofen? How could he describe the feeling of skipping over time, catapulting over generations, only to end up in the same place every leap year? He was a battle-scarred time traveler in hiding, and nothing about his life was relatable. Ricky waited patiently. Generic Starbucks music played in the background, something soft and reggae adjacent, as the two sat in silence. Finally, Ezra sighed, his shoulders slumping in silent resignation. And he spoke. How do I sustain myself? It's a complicated story, Ricky. I just come from a different time. Not just in terms of the date, but in terms of life. In the 1910s, Fallon County was Jim Crow in a way that folks today can't understand. You see black and white photos of unsmiling sharecroppers wearing dusty rags. It feels like people from another world. We were real people, with real dreams, full identities, talents. It's probably a gift from the ancestors that stories of the casual brutality are lost to time. We were terrorized. Sometimes it was like you could predict violence by holding your pointer finger up to the wind to track the weather. Other times you couldn't. I saw monstrous and human things. I'd rather not go into it. My family was killed in a church fire set by the Klan. My cousin Sonny was the only survivor. An overdose killed him at 31, but he'd been dying for years. Ezra took a pause, fingering the shirt button at his wrist. Church terrorism isn't unique, I mean, it happened all the time, and it still does, doesn't it? Ezra let out a hollow and mirthless laugh. He was struggling to contain it. Anyway, the sheriff ordered this one. Sheriff Warders from the money and influential South Carolina family. One of his brothers was the governor. Another was a White House bomb. Now we all knew that this sheriff had black babies, but white people didn't. And down there back then, would have sunk his entire family if it ever came out. They would have lost everything. Fortune, political power, everything gone. After I became a perennial, I took a train down to South Carolina. I swore I'd never come back, but everything was different. I couldn't die. And it struck me that my grief would be eternal. All the loss from the fire. My family. Everyone I grew up knowing and valuing. It'd just stretch on forever. No relief. So I had business with Sheriff Rourke, and nothing to lose. Less than nothing. Ezra paused. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. But his jaw was working, and his voice fell deeper, as if he were physically sinking into the memory. I got in his house through a basement window. It was after dark. Nobody was home. Caught him by the throat, pistol to his temple, and I told him I knew his secret. I said I'd keep quiet for $50,000. Near $1 million back then. He gave it to me. It was that easy. I gave half the cash to the families of the people who burned and fired. And Sheriff Rourke's black descendants. I invested in the town, buildings, schools, hospitals, roads. Today it's one of the most prosperous black towns in the South. I'm right proud. He briefly glanced at me. His eyes moved. I invested my half in property, all over the world. Over the years, the money grew and grew. So that's it. And that's how I can afford my lifestyle. Ezra stopped talking and looked away. He suddenly looked so much older. The weight of all that time and pain etched on his face. Ricky couldn't bear seeing him this way. Her heart crashed against her ribs. It was devastating, the matter-of-fact practicality with which he told his story. She wanted to cry, to fight, to scream into nothingness. For several lifetimes he'd been carrying these memories alone. But now he had her. She wanted to draw him to her chest and comfort him, protect him. To smother him with so much steady, secure affection that he'd forget what it was like to suffer alone. Ricky wanted to be Ezra's support, to be there beside him and help him share the weight he was carrying. She wanted to be the one person for whom he could finally let down his walls. But she couldn't do all of this if she was to die in 10 days, and he would still be alone. Ricky had no more questions. She understood every detail, and they were in it together. I believe you, she said resolutely. You do. Ezra looked at her with wonder. Why? Okay. Well, my mom always keeps her house freezing. She thinks it's good for her skin. When I was little, I always wore this red blanket draped around my shoulders. Everyone thought it was because I was cold, but I was wearing it because it was my magic cloak. And it made all my fantasies come true. I wore it on my grand adventures, making up quests and stomping through the woods behind the house. cloak and its powers were real to me. I was indestructible when I wore it. I couldn't explain it, but I had faith that it was true. I grew up, but my magical thinking didn't. The world's full of mysteries we can't explain. The Bermuda Triangle, Siberian sinkholes, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, Twinkies. Ezra's eyes softened. Oh, little Richard. I'm picturing you stomping around in a cape. And it's really cute. I told you I do not consent to that nickname. I like your coat, by the way. He gestured at her bright red vintage cape. The magic red cloak you had when you were a kid. Was that your inspiration? Smiling, she offered a slight shrug. I like symbolism. I see that. He locked his gaze on hers. Bare naked affection was all over Ezra's face. The way he looked at her with that simmering charisma. He ate her alive. Obliterated all her good sense. Was the charge crackling between them just cosmic fate? Or more? Whatever it was, their connection soothed her darkest fears. Made her feel more herself and at home than anywhere. And it was currently turning her to liquid in the middle of Starbucks. That night at my apartment, she asked, her voice searching, vulnerable. The beauty you create in the world, your optimism, your brain, your fascination with being fascinated, the way your face fits perfectly under my chin when we're sleeping, your tenderness, whether your focus is on the care of a single flower. Me. His gaze was unwavering. Ricky, you've turned me upside down. For so long I've lived life like it was something to endure, to push through. But with you, I know how precious it can be. And I refuse to live in a world without you in it. Ricky's heart thundered in her chest. You feel all those things for me. I do, he said quietly. And I know in my bones that I'd feel them, hex or no hex. I do. I feel so much it scares me. She was overwhelmed. The stakes were so high. Ricky wanted a quiet, normal life, to run her little shop, be at peace. And yes, she longed for a passionate romance. But this specific passionate romance, featuring an immortal lover and a premature death sentence? No. She couldn't die. So much was unfinished. Ezra needed his person. Miss Della needed her granddaughter. Tuesday needed her best friend. Wild Things needed its creative force, and her family, well, that was another story. She was comic relief to them at best. But deep down, she'd always hoped to receive their acceptance. Maybe with a bit more time, she'd get it. All these emotions and desires crashed inside of her, and then coalesced into one single promise. Ezra, what if we could find a way to break the curse? You'd be mortal, and I'd be saved from death in 10 days. We'd be free from this madness. Ricky showed Ezra her phone. I've done some research on how to reverse hexes, and this diagnostic quiz came out. Before we do anything, we have to be sure it's a curse. She pulled up a screenshot of a quiz she'd found on reversethecurse.com. Is there someone in your life that you have angered or offended in some way? Is that person someone who has the magical knowledge to place a harmful spell on you? Is a hex or curse the only possible explanation for what is happening to you? Ezra glanced from the screen to Ricky. Yes, yes, and yes. I thought so. Just wanted to do this right. Here's the good news. I've made 3 appointments with spiritual specialists, she announced with pride. One of them has to work. Spiritual specialists? Ezra looked skeptical. Felice used dark voodoo. It's powerful magic, not bad vibes or negative energy. I knew you'd say that, which is why I found authentic spell reversal experts. appreciate your effort. I do. But every so-called medium or psychic I've ever met is a hack. If all it took was the Psychic Friends Network, I could have wrapped this up ages ago. Ricky bit her lip. Did you actually call the Psychic Friends Network? Those Dionne Warwick infomercials were very persuasive. He sighed. I don't know. The 90s were bleak. First of all, I would never waste our time with fakes. I've thoroughly vetted and researched these specialists. Secondly, have you heard of Yelp? Of course I've heard of Yelp. He paused. I haven't heard of Yelp. Well, let's just say these women have very satisfied customers. Trust me. And then she leaned forward onto the table, dead serious in her desperation. Ezra, listen to me. You have to go along with this because we don't have any other options. It's my life on the line, get it? Ezra's eyes widened at her intensity. Got it. Good. She sat back in her chair. Also, after extensive research on paybacksawitch.com, I learned that when an immortality curse is broken, the immortal returns to the same age they were pre-Hex. We'd be the same age, at the same time. You can start over, with me. Her brave earnestness hit something soft in Ezra. He reached across the table and held her hand. Ricky had forgotten what happened when they touched. Shimmering warmth rippled through her in waves. Her palm tingled long after he dropped his hand. Their first stop was Madame Ceci, a bright-eyed, round, middle-aged woman with a shock of auburn hair, ornamented with a rhinestone-studded headband. Her office was nestled above a Chinese massage parlor on West 24th Street. It was the kind of place Ezra had seen a million times. Gaudy sign in the window flashing psychic in aggressive neon green. This was a long shot, but deep down, a vague ribbon of hope ran through him. He'd never shared his story with anyone, and he'd walked alone in it for too long. But now, knowing that Ricky was walking with him, it lessened the despair. In fact, after confiding in her about everything, the church fire, Sonny, he felt more alive than he had in decades. Most likely, this psychic would be a waste of time. But what if she wasn't? They sat down on plastic folding chairs across from Madame Ceci, who was perched on a wicker throne, 1983 bridal shower edition. And then, with animated hopefulness, Ricky explained their situation. Madame Ceci nodded while setting an actual crystal ball on the aluminum coffee table between her and her guests. This is an underworld issue. This is an underworld issue. According to astrology, the underworld is in the 4th house, which is the house of the ancestors. It's a dark labyrinth populated by old gods, old rules, and restless souls. Mr. Ezra, the curse cast you down into the underworld, a purgatory of sorts, where you're barred from the human experience. And then she shouted, with no way out! Surprised, Ricky and Ezra reflexively jumped in their creaky seats. What you need, Madame Ceci, is a psycho pump. And circumstance? Joked Ricky. Ezra snickered, and the psychic glared at them both. A psycho pump is a guide to escort Mr. Ezra out of the underworld. Mr. Ezra, I'm happy to be your symbolic psycho pump, leading you by torchlight back to mortality. It's a painless ritual involving special candles, essential oils, and a large aluminum gong. Appreciate you, he said with his usual cordiality. May I ask what it'll cost? For you? $16,000 flat. I see. In Amex gift cards, she said without a trace of an accent. If you have them. Their next stop was an energy healer located a 50-minute train ride away, in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Phoebe Lore was a middle-aged black woman wearing a floral floor-length tunic and a yellow snapback with the word stoner across the front. She welcomed them into her bohemian chic studio, which she shared with a tantric yogi. In one corner, a sweaty hetero couple was locked in a tangle of limbs as a man-bunned dude in a leotard poached their breathing. With its sleek wood floors, exposed brick walls, and patchouli candles, the space oozed upscale chill. A bit of Ricky's earlier optimism was fading, but she remained undeterred. Besides, since she was a sucker for aesthetics, the carefully curated decor made her feel like she was in professional hands. Ezra and Ricky settled into a suede love seat and took in Phoebe's advice. "What you need," announced Phoebe, "is a magic mirror box." "A magic mirror box?" repeated Ezra, massaging a temple. "I place a mirror in a wooden box, along with something that represents the person cursing you. A photo, a doll, etc. Then the mirror reflects that person's curse back onto them." "The cursor's deceased," noted Ricky. "Can she absorb magic from beyond the grave?" "Don't see why not." Ricky turned toward Ezra and whispered, "The pearl bracelet. You don't seriously believe this will work?" "I trust her. Look at that majestic tunic. She looks so authentic." "Authentic to what, though?" whispered Ezra. "Biggie's face is silkscreened on that tunic. All that tells me is she's representing BK to the fullest." Ricky blinked. "You know that phrase?" "I told you music references, I know." And then Ezra forgot himself and started talking. Ricky's presence had that effect on him. "Besides, I helped write Unbelievable. I had a dog-walking job over in Fulton around 92. And I overheard this oversized kid outside a bodega mumbling bars under his breath. His lyric was live from Bedford-Stuyvesant, Voletta's son. But I suggested live from Bedford-Stuyvesant, the livest one, because it was braggy. 92? Phoebe frowned. "You were wordsmithing like that as an embryo?" "No less believable than a magic mirror box," grumbled Ezra. Clearing her throat, Ricky asked, "How long does it take for the mirror to work?" "At least 1 month. Sometimes up to 6. 1 month? She tried to stave off rising panic. "We need to break the curse by the 29th. Do you have a rush option?" "What, like a mystical FedEx?" Phoebe scoffed. "Sorry, I can't be of help. Love and light, though." The last and final stop was a Wiccan in Astoria, Queens. A chipper, extraordinarily pale woman with honey blonde curls. Mistress Jojo was cloaked in dark jeans, a black sweatshirt, and tons of black eyeshadow. A pentagram was tattooed on the back of her right hand. And her office was just as goth, with black curtains and black candles. Ezra and Ricky sat down on oversized black floor pillows. This time, Ricky was out and out desperate. She'd broken out in a sweat. She was chewing the inside of her mouth anxiously. This had to work. Meanwhile, the small spark of hope Ezra had felt at the start of the day had completely vanished. He just wanted Ricky, a nap, preferably both together. The spiritualist thing was an obvious hustle, but they weren't marks ready to be swindled. Ezra had always wished he could die like everyone else, to end the grinding repetitiveness of living. But now there was Ricky. He couldn't imagine life without her. If they didn't solve this, she'd have only 10 days left, and it would end in an early death that he caused, just as surely as if he'd fired a gun or administered poison. The guilt eating away at the edges of his heart was monstrous. There had to be a solve. But this wasn't it. To curse someone, you obviously need magic, Jojo was saying. Magic is activated by words and desire. I don't mean desire in a sexual way, I mean desire as a primal need. The need might be self-sabotaging or dangerous, but it's very real. The fact that you've been immortal since 1928, that's powerful magic. And as all spiritualists know, self-magic is the most potent. So I have to ask, are you sure your ex-girlfriend cursed you? Ezra was tired, and he didn't love her tone. Apologies, ma'am, I don't follow. Maybe you cursed yourself. Respectfully, why would I do that? I don't know. Her voice dripped with condescension. You tell me. Now Ezra was angry. He shouldn't have to prove his story to this cheap grifter. This is gaslighting, scolded Ricky. Ezra knows what happened to him. He was there. Jojo chuckled. With all due respect, sometimes when we self-sabotage, it feels safer to blame an outside party. It's easier to process being wronged by a villain rather than yourself. Interesting theory, said Ezra. But I didn't curse myself. Well, just to be sure, let's perform the bond-cutting ceremony. She reached into a clunky wooden chest and pulled out 2 black wooden blocks connected by a foot of twine tied to each. Just cut the twine with this magic knife. It's pure sterling silver sprinkled with salt and garlic. As you cut, say this out loud. I sever and release the bonds I placed upon myself. Ezra's eyes narrowed, and his posture went rigid. I'll say this one more time. First of all, interrupted Ricky, who was visibly pissed, silver, salt, and garlic are vampire killers. Ezra's not a vampire, got it? Secondly, the substances we think of as protection against vampires are actually just antibacterial. Salt and garlic protected against infections and illnesses that centuries ago we'd attribute to some spooky influence. I think a Wiccan would know that. And by the way, this is why black people distrust healthcare professionals. We're not taken seriously. She caught her breath. So are you going to listen to him or not? Ezra sat there with full-on heart eyes and a modest heart on. Did little Richard Wilde just square up on a witch for him? Was he just figuratively Little Spoon? He was in awe. No one had ever stood up for him like that. A woman had never been his knight in shining armor. He was used to being the rescuer. It was the sexiest thing he'd ever seen. I understand, hun, but I think we can agree that a bond-cutting ceremony couldn't hurt. Ezra, would you mind doing the honors? I filed a trademark on the bond-cutting knife, by the way. Ricky, would you mind taking a pic for the gram? With steadfast calm, Ezra took the knife from her. He cut the twine. There you go, exclaimed Mistress Jojo. Curse broken. How do you feel? Out of the corner of his mouth, Ezra muttered to Ricky. Trigger warning. Huh? And then, lightning fast, Ezra covered Ricky's eyes with his left hand. With his right, he plunged the knife into his heart. After a few beats, he easily yanked it out. The blade was faintly tinged with blood. But in a few seconds, it swiftly evaporated into nothing. All that remained was a slight slit in his coat, over his heart. With a pleasant smile, he handed the knife back to Jojo. Oh, good. You? Eyes open, Ricky looked at the knife, looked at Mistress Jojo, and looked at Ezra, and her hands flew to her cheeks. Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! On the 5th, oh my God, Ricky snapped out of her shell. She grabbed Ezra's arm and pulled him out of his chair. Before rushing out the door, she threw a 20 in the Wiccan's lap and said, Don't worry, you won't remember him in a month. Several blocks away from Mistress Jojo's office, Ricky and Ezra descended into an E-train station, enveloped in the warmth of the nearly empty platform. Ricky stood in front of Ezra, shaking uncontrollably, and babbling, and pacing. Jesus Christ, Ezra, you really are immortal. A perennial. Holy shit, this is real. You said you believed me. Did it hurt? Should I call 911? Frantically, she patted her hands over the front of his coat and shouted into the uncrowded platform. Any doctors in the house? Over on the nearest bench, an elderly, bespectacled gentleman glanced up from his New York Post. My oldest niece is an orthopedic surgeon, but she lives in Des Moines. All good, sir. Thank you. Leading Ricky farther down the platform, Ezra whispered, I'm fine. I don't feel pain like mortals. At most, it's like a light scratch. And I heal right away. Are you sure? You could chop off my hand, and to me, it'd feel like a paper cut. Breathe. Just breathe. They stopped walking, and he ran his hands over the tops of her arms, trying to warm her up and calm her down. She allowed herself to be soothed. I didn't want to scare you, he assured her. I was just tired of being questioned. I know you're tired, she breathed out. And soon her shakes subsided. Her breath steadied. And then she peered up at him with brazen confidence. I have one more idea. Ever heard of Eva Mercy? Chapter 19. The Forrest Gump of Music. February 20th, 2024. Della was extremely concerned about Ricky. Della thought her granddaughter had lost her mind and had taken to discussing it with everyone she knew. On a covert phone call with Tuesday, she whispered, "That girl's acting stranger than a soup sandwich." Over breakfast with Nas, she said, "That girl's acting like she ain't got but one oar in the water." On another phone call to her Lynx walking club, she announced, "That girl's acting 3 pickles shy of a quart, if you get my meaning." Everyone got her meaning. If the elder woman was freaking out a bit, it was understandable. Ricky had passed clean the hell out on her living room floor. And why? Because she'd shown her an antique pearl bracelet. It was odd. Plus, Della wasn't convinced that Ricky was eating or sleeping properly. Her eyes were starting to look far away, and she often trailed off mid-sentence. Whatever was going on with Ricky, at least she was as punctual as ever for their standing tea party. She arrived upstairs at Della's triplex at exactly noon, and the Oz welcomed her with a bouquet of sunflowers. Ricky had been invited to an intervention. First of all, they were meeting in the dining room instead of the living room. And instead of Lorna Doones and crustless sandwiches, Della had arranged for Sylvia's restaurant to deliver a gourmet meal: sassy wings, catfish fingers, and salmon bites, Ricky's favorite dishes. Plus, Tuesday was there, legs crossed and arms folded, looking imperious. Della greeted Ricky with a wide smile on her face. Today, she was feeling weaker than usual, so she blew Ricky several kisses from her dining chair instead of hopping up to give her a hug. "What is all of this?" Ricky lowered herself into a chair, eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Have a catfish finger," suggested Tuesday, behaving as if her presence at tea was super normal. "Don't look so distrustful," said Della. "Dear, you've been acting so strangely. You came to tea and passed clean out mid-conversation. Nas had to wallop you back to life. You closed the shop for 2 days, which you never do. You won't answer your phone. And Tuesday told me that you're dating a serial killer." Stunned, Ricky shot a betrayed look at her friend. "Well, what do you have to say for yourself?" asked Tuesday, who was wearing a stiff navy pantsuit with a modest chignon. "Tuesday, what are you doing here? And why are you dressed like a district attorney? Serious business calls for a serious outfit." Nas poked her head into the living room. "I like the suit. It's giving Marriott concierge." "Nas, please," huffed Della, who was in no mood for her relentless enthusiasm. The nurse threw up a peace sign and exited. "Look, I know I've been acting weird," started Ricky. "My whole life is turned upside down." She took a beat, trying to quell her nervousness. "Miss Della, Tuesday, I have something to tell you both. It won't make any sense at all. If you're worried about my mental health now, you'll want to have me committed by the end of this story, but please try to believe me. What I'm about to say is real. Miss Della